Hello and welcome to TRADOC In Depth. I'm John Harlow with TRADOC News Service. Today I'm talking with former Ambassador to Chad, Lawrence Pope, about Unified Quest. That's next on TRADOC In Depth. Ambassador Pope, what do you bring to the table at Unified Quest?
I acquired a certain amount of political military experience during the CENTCOM years, and then experience as a diplomat working overseas, an ambassador, and trying to help bridge the conceptual gap that sometimes exists between civilian institutions and military ones, which in this era is particularly important to close.
What ideas have been generated at this seminar that you'll be able to take back with you?
You know, there's an evolution here in the United Quest series from the pure sort of business of warfighting into this broader era of persistent conflict. And there's a recognition that the Army has developed, which is more and more broadly shared, I think, within the national security community, that the themes of interagency cooperation are increasingly important in this sort of persistent conflict world in which problems are often not susceptible to purely military solutions.
As a former ambassador, how does Unified Quest help build bridges with other interagency organizations?
We've got a great participation here from former ambassadors with unique experience in different parts of the world. Some folks who are working to bridge that gap in the interagency process, which it's so important to bridge. And I think that outside perspective is useful to the Army. I hope so, anyway.
How has Unified Quest helped shape your thoughts on future policy and strategy issues?
Well, as I said, I've taken part in this series of exercises for the last 5 or 6 years, and I've watched the evolution. And I'm always deeply impressed by how seriously the Army takes a re-examination of its professional operating concepts. You know, a profession, to be a serious profession, has to do that every once in a while. And the Army does that, and it does it with great honesty and great integrity. And the results are not always comfortable, and doctrine evolves to change. And I've seen, in the last several years, I've seen evolution in Army doctrine towards a broader view of the world and a broader view of our place in it. And I think that that's been an important evolution, and it augurs well for the future.
How important do you feel it is that all of these different organizations are participating in Unified Quest?
You know, one thing I've learned as a result of continued exposure to this kind of a group, and this group in many cases, since the same people come back, is that the Army has its own intellectuals. The Army has its own deep thinkers. Sometimes people who go back to the development of doctrines like the air-land battle. And that historical perspective that they provide is critically important. The Army leadership, I think, benefits greatly from it. The participation of foreign officers, allied officers, is critical, because that perspective, I recall at last year's event, that we had something like 6 or 7 general officers from allied armies who were there present. So participation at a very high level from our allies, and they bring a badly needed perspective. As far as us civilians go and our participation, I think that's a perspective that's welcomed as well, particularly in this world of persistent conflict again, in which the solutions are typically not going to be exclusively or even primarily kinetic or military in nature.
Ambassador Pope, thanks for joining me today on TRADOC In Depth. With the TRADOC News Service, I'm John Harlow.